Welcome, everyone. I see this incredibly beautiful mosaic appearing before my eyes. And thank you for joining us this morning. And it's a tremendous gift to both yourself and to everyone who is here in the temple, including the trees and the sky and the furniture in your room and the people in the rooms next to you and your neighbors. All one constellation of being. I think we'll sit for a couple minutes while people are signing in. The great silence of the bell. The temple bell, both announcing and singing the silence. As the sound of the bell falls back into the silence. And then whatever else is appearing moves forward into being. And resting in the center of the silence, each person, you yourself, endlessly things appearing from the inner life and the outer life, and there's no difference really. Resting in the center of the silence, you let things be themselves. And in the center of the silence, everything appearing doesn't impinge upon you. And if you feel your life pressing in and impinging upon you, you rest inside of that. You let that be here too. The great silence at the center opens out infinitely. Outwardly, there's no end. Inwardly, there's no end. I think a transtrom or vault after vault inside each person opens out endlessly. Well, welcome everyone to our third in this January series with Tess and Jesse and Michelle and I on the great silence at the beginning. And in a way, January has that sense of this new beginning or this fresh start, or in the way every time you sit in meditation, it has that same quality of you're at the beginning of the universe. The sense of everything that came before has fallen into abeyance and is no longer at play, I guess. And everything that is about to come has not yet arisen. And there's a sense of, I guess, communion with the life that's here, or a sense of receiving and not interfering with anything. For a while, the period of meditation, you let the universe make itself and also destroy itself. Whatever it's up to at the moment, it's no longer up to you to manage the universe and make it, to pull it into being or shove it out of the way. It's just doing that on its own. And in a way, in the meditation, you begin to get a sense of what it feels like if I weren't trying to control the world. And the great silence. So it gives us it allows the universe to appear and also to disappear without deciding beforehand what would be good to have come into being or get rid of. The other night, I'd been hearing about this green comet, and that I think it's something like the first time, I don't know, some massive, large number, like 50,000 years or something, the first time it's come around. And so a couple nights ago, we went out to look for it, and I'd heard, we sort of vaguely had some idea of where it was, but, we thought we knew where it was, but when we got out there, we realized we didn't really know where it was. And we also knew you had to have binoculars, so we brought binoculars. It's a beautiful, sparkling, clear night, no moon yet. And because we didn't even know if you could see it or not, that we thought, well, we just started looking for it sort of everywhere. And this is very much like your own awakening. You have some idea of where it's going to come from and what it's going to look like and how you're going to get there, how we're going to find this green comet. And we start looking at the sky and trying to find it, and pretty soon we just kind of we forget about the green comet because we're looking at the stars in Orion, and if you have binoculars suddenly, or we're looking at the Pleiades, and there's this tremendous sense of awe and at the glittering majesty of the universe. And there we had, there was our morning star. With this evening star, I and all beings awaken. And we didn't need to see the green comet in order for that to happen. So this morning I was looking for actually where to find the green comet. And I looked on this site called Earth Sky, where they have very accurate information, and they said that tonight there would be another celestial event. It would be Saturn, would be Venus, the evening and morning star. It would be Venus, the morning star, and it would be right at sunset. There would be a conjunction of Venus and Saturn and the new moon. And so tonight you can go and look for your own morning star, evening star, green comet. So today I want to talk about the moments of awakening, or what is it to have a practice, and what does the great silence have to do with awakening and meditation, how those are related to each other. And also this idea of the New Year's resolutions. I saw this great thing the other day where it was in the New York Times, where there was a piece on awe. And someone had written, it was a professor of, I don't know, professor of neuroscience or something at UC Berkeley, and he'd written a book on, it was called The New Science of Everyday Awe. The New Science of Everyday Wonder and How It Can Transform Your Life. And then it was all these methods of how to evoke intentional awe experiences. So many of us take up meditation in that kind of spirit of, I'm going to try to, get some awe so that I can, I don't know, be happier, or I guess to have some kind of, I guess to get away from this terrible feeling of despair or restlessness or longing or confusion or fear. Fear is a really large one these days. A lot of sense of fear around. Maybe I can use awe to get rid of this fear. And the story of Buddha, I think, is tremendously interesting, because it starts with the condition of having achieved, basically, it starts with the condition of Buddha having achieved all of his New Year's and all of your New Year's resolutions. So he's got the life perfectly down. He's got the beautiful mansion, he's got his mortgage paid off, he's got the perfect partner, he has a child, he has status and money. So, and he's kept, and there's absolutely no sense of anything unwanted, anything that I would feel might be a problem and is excluded, and anything that I consider in the realm of desirable has been achieved. And he begins there, the story begins there, which is just a beautiful and strange opening to the story of awakening. And in a way, the Buddhist story, it sort of describes what it's like to the kind of sorrow that is the longing that cannot be assuaged by getting things. And I think over and over again we discover that the truth of that. I mean, in very small ways, it can be, I think, God, if I really want to lose some weight, but there is some vanilla bean ice cream in the freezer right now, and there's also dark chocolate, and there's also almonds and pecans, and if I just put it all in this nice little bowl, and that will do it. And then as I'm putting the ice cream in, I think, I just want a little more. I want a little more. I want more. I want more. And there's a part of the mind that is just full of this sense of craving, that if I can only have more of something, then I guess I don't know what it is. I look inside of myself like, what is that? I think it's so that I won't meet the 4 touch, the 4 touches that Buddha met. And it's all the things that he wanted to keep out. One, it was sickness, old age, death, and then the monk, the path that there's a way forward. So this is the experience of that intrinsic in every moment is the loss of the moment. This kind of both the sorrow of the inescapable sorrow of things passing, falling back into the great silence, and we so much wish that we could maintain the palace. And so there's that, but there's also, you'll discover, a tremendous amount of effort is required continually to maintain the sense of a separate, safe, and jeweled me in my life, that you'll find that you'll just, even if it's working, maybe particularly if it's working, that there's this continual, let's say you finally achieve the perfect weight, whatever that is for you. Maybe you finally gained the 20 pounds that you wanted to because you're struggling with anorexia, and you just, the skeletal quality, and you finally achieved it, or you've lost the 20 pounds that you wanted to lose. And then if there's this sense of battling, of being at war with some part of my life, and you can find that, this is very much a part of the Buddha's story too. That is the second, what he did after he left the palace was he thought, well, I'll just try to keep out of my own mind anything that I in some way feel is an impediment to my awakening. And that will be something different for everyone. For you it might be, I don't know, if I can just keep this critical mind, I'm always just really hostile and critical. Like, I'm always finding fault with everyone. In my job, I'm finding fault with everyone. And even if I don't say it, I'm feeling it. And so I'm really going to work on my meditation. And what I'll do is I'll just try to calm that part of the mind. I'll try to extinguish that part of my own experience. But you can see the trouble there, and the Buddha discovered this, is that you can get really good at that and be outwardly, suddenly everyone at work is thinking, oh wow, you're really, it's nice to be with you now. You're not so critical, and it's not so unpleasant. I don't want to get a different shift that I'm not sharing with you. But then there'll be the war, it just changes the location. And there'll be this continual sense of needing to control and dampen down the inner life. And so the Buddha discovered, he took that to the sort of the nth degree, where there's a kind of starvation, there's a kind of extinguishing of life, and in fact he almost extinguished his own life, which is a beautiful and strange and disturbing image. He gave us these two sides of the path of basically of control, which is to try to get everything I want in the first one, and then the second is to try to push everything that I don't want to be here away. And that you'll find that any time there's some part of my life that I, either inner or outer, and you'll find that they are corresponding. There's something in the outer world that I just can't bear to be here, there'll be some inner correspondence in its beautiful symmetry. I think you begin to start to notice that in your own practice, that the meditation gives you another way to be with all of this. It's not the austerities or the getting of things. It's just simply the resting and letting our lives act upon us and letting life itself change us without us deciding beforehand what we'll look like. That there's a tremendous trust, I think, in reality. That's the thing I think that really drew me to the practice of Zen, particularly the way the old Chan masters practiced, which is there wasn't any part of my own life or my own inner experience that I was going to need to have to pretend wasn't there. There would be no discoveries that I could make that would need to be censored. And simply to feel that in your meditation is to find your own sense of refuge. A place that Jesse described it beautifully last week, where he's talking about the great silence in the center, the great silence at the beginning, is this place of, it's actually your Buddha nature. It's you. It's the sense of, there's nothing that can harm it. There's no, and I guess that's when I was saying that there was nothing in myself that I could discover either outwardly or inwardly that couldn't be included. And that's the experience of your own nature as being unstained and nothing can harm it. It's not in opposition to anything before I've decided right or wrong, is the great silence. So I think that's a good place. We're going to sit for a bit, and the great silence is inside of everything. Like I see there's a black tail of a cat going across someone's screen. The great silence there, the great silence inside of, at the beginning, inside of everything in your room, outside your house, in your country, in the oceans, in the new moon, in the green comet. We're going to sit. A great silence at the beginning. With this morning star, I and all beings awaken. With this Jordan's music, I and all beings awaken. A great silence at the beginning. With this morning star, I and all beings awaken. Welcome back. Oh, so beautiful, Jordan. I just did not want that music to end. Um, so I think that sense of there's a kind of sweetness too in the sense of the of loss, the longing. There's a kind of sweetness in every experience, that the whole amplitude of human experience. I remember speaking to a couple of friends about this, about how, in a way, I can remember when my beloved cat Alyosha died, and I think he was really the first being that I was intimately close with, that I'd walk through every moment of death with, through the getting sick, through the terrible chaos of the vet's office, to the being with him, bringing him home, and the whole night, and the burial, and all of that, and how the grief and the sorrow was fitting, and it had a flavor and a taste that was nourishing and seemed to make the world wider and more alive in a way. And it seemed to be his final gift to me, was the walking through his death with him. So every appearance and disappearance, if we aren't fighting with it and we simply receive it and let it affect us and change us, then we don't need to be afraid of our lives. So with the Buddha's story, we left him, we found him first when he had achieved the perfect life. And then where there was the discovery of, I guess, his own sense of that there are, that maybe that there's, one can't, there's a sorrow in the separation, of the experience of separation, that is required to hold myself even in a perfect life, and that is inextricable in that kind of way of being in one's life. And then all of the effort of the austerities, and then to the point where he almost left life itself, that sense of starvation. And then we come to his Buddha's Enlightenment Night, which I was reading the story the other day, and I love the image of when he comes to the Bodhi tree, and he tries to sit on the various sides of it, on the west side, on the south side, on the north side, and it tips into hell, and there's no sense of rest and stability. And then he sits in the side facing east, facing, I don't know, I guess it's facing the great silence and the life appearing, and he finds the place that doesn't move, the immovable seat. I think that's another way of describing your sitting meditation, that you can feel it formally when you sit, but you can feel it any time you rest in the center of the silence, that it's an immovable seat. And it's not like it comes from being strong or being invincible. It itself is like, it's like the center of where the universe is spinning around. It's immovable because it lets everything move. I guess that's how you could describe it. It lets everything move around it, and therefore it's the center, and it's immovable. So that night, he sits, he finds a seat that does not move, and Mara appears. And I think this is a beautiful image of what practice is, where in the story of Buddha, Mara appears, you could say it's his own mind that it was beautifully, Mara in the story is everything that the Buddha himself would be afraid of, or would be seduced by, or would be anything you would try to hold off or try to get, Mara is offering. And you can feel that in your own mind when you sit in meditation, that there will be currents of feeling tone, of the emotional body. There'll be images rising up to pull you one direction or another, images to frighten you, images to promises of power, promises of love, whatever your mind is doing, pay your mortgage off, or whatever the thing is that it's offering you, or frightening you with, hurling spears of, oh God, you got to pay off that student debt, or you have to make that phone call to your sister who's, whatever your mind is doing, that's Buddha's mind. And you're sitting in the seat that does not move, the immovable seat of your own being. And every person that's here has a sense of that. If you're here, you know about this. And in some traditions, I've heard the story told that somehow there's a sense that he's not affected by it, but that's not the Chan understanding of it. It's that all of those feelings, the seductions and the fear and the longing and the grief and the loss, is passing through the Buddha unimpeded. He's no longer afraid of the feelings, the images, the parts of his past or his future or his present. Nothing in the world he's at war with. He's no longer at war with his life. And then his life can pass through him and change him. And then he's not afraid, and you are not afraid of that territory as you move through your life. And the more you practice, the wider the sense of freedom and ease inside yourself. It enlarges. And other people can feel this when you're with them, and you yourself can feel it. And I mean, that's the image of the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is no longer afraid of the life appearing. So you yourself know about this way of being. So he sits all night, and just as you sit all night, every time you sit, even if it's for 1 minute, it's all night. It's the whole of night. It's the whole of your life. every moment that you sit. And you yourself are discovering awakening. And in the morning, he looks up as dawn's coming on and he sees the morning star. And he says, he cries out, "With this morning star." And I love that it's Venus, the morning star Venus. There's something about that too, about the goddess of love that is the morning star, the brightest celestial body except for the sun is the Venus. And with this morning star, I and all beings awaken. And it's not that all beings now are purified. They are themselves. They're allowed to become fully themselves and be in the moment of their own transformation of awakening. And they may be, and this is true, so awakening is not like a linear trajectory where you go through all these steps, you awaken, and then you're always, awaken. You'll find that throughout each day, each moment, it's this elliptical movement through being caught in your own hell realms. And then some piece of the universe will step forward, and it won't come from your own good intentions or your own efforts. You'll hear a bird call, or you'll notice the sunlight on a leaf shimmering, and then you'll be back. And at this point, that's the moment where your practice comes in. And those are moments of awakening. Like this morning, sometimes I really like to, right before I give a talk, once I've done all the preparation and, I make like reams and reams on piles of notes. And then I just have to sift through them the day before and or that morning. And then slowly everything gets sort of winnowed down to a couple of pages of material. I have to write things really big with a thick Sharpie pen because my eyesight's not that great. And then I may not even check my notes, but just to know that I can check my notes and actually read them. And so I've got all this settled, and then there's a feeling of I just need to feel the earth. And in a way, that was a moment in the Buddha's Awakening Night where he reaches down and he touches the earth. And that's where you can you can trust the moment that you're in. You can reach and touch the carpet, or you can look at the sky. Let the earth touch you. So I lay down on the carpet. I was, I don't know, not really worrying, but just sort of agitated. Like slightly sick to my stomach, but and feeling like I'd really like to not be sick to my stomach. And so I'm lying down, I look outside, and there's just the top of a eucalyptus tree behind the house, and some pipes that are sticking up, and some electrical wires running through the sky. And there's this bit of the eucalyptus tree that there's something about the leaves where I think they have some kind of oil on them or something, but certain lights, they catch the light, and they are like they've been gilded with just like this, with gold leaf, as if they have gold leaf and they're shimmering in the light. And it was the morning star, with this morning star. And it's a sense of the separate me that has trouble and could do it right or wrong. There's something to gain or something to lose. All of that falls into abeyance, and there's a sense of being held inside the world. There's a sense of communion. I think of the actual communion. I was raised Catholic, and there's this wonderful ritual where they place the host, the little piece of unleavened bread, on your tongue, and then you're not allowed to chew it. You're supposed to let it dissolve in your mouth, and it's that sense of, and then it's Christ's body. It's supposed to actually be the living body of Christ that then dissolves inside of you. And in a way, that's very much like the same image of, with this host, with this morning star, I and all beings, the sense of myself and others dissolves. I'm going to read you a poem. This is to give you a feel for, this is just like, it's just everywhere in human experience. It's not something that the Buddhists discovered or have a kind of cornered market on. It's intrinsic to human experience. And this is a poem I really love. It's by Wordsworth, and it's I love this poem, and I was reading about it the other day, and I discovered this. It's called Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, September 3rd, 1802. And I found out he was on his way to, in his youth, when he was a student at Cambridge, during the summer, the first summer, he just hated Cambridge, and he just was a pretty terrible student, and he just wanted to get out of there. So he decided to go on a walking tour of Europe, and he went to the Swiss Alps, and he's walking through the Swiss Alps, and being Wordsworth, he's really not paying much attention. And the next thing you know, he walks into the French Revolution. And there's all this chaos and turmoil around him. And he ends up going back to Cambridge, being changed by that. And then the following summer, he goes back directly to France. And there he falls in love with a French woman. And she gets pregnant. And he stays there for a couple of months. There's all these stories about how they tried to get married, and being the French Revolution, they weren't able to work this out. And he goes back to France, and he goes on with his life, and there's this turmoil in the countries, and he can't get back, and she can't get there. And he eventually falls in love with another woman. So the woman, the French woman, Annette, she has a daughter that's Wordsworth's illegitimate daughter. And he's on his way, September 3rd, 1802, to go meet his daughter, Caroline, for the first time. And he's going to cross the English Channel with his sister Dorothy. And on their way to go to the boat to cross the channel, they're on Westminster Bridge, and they have this kind of epiphany of like seeing the morning star. And I think it's no accident that the epiphany came to him when he was able to turn towards the east, turn towards a part of his life which had been excluded, and to go and meet his daughter. And here it is. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul, who could pass a sight so touching in its majesty. This city now doth, like a garment wear, the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. Ships, towers, domes, theaters, and temples lie open unto the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor valley, rock, or hill. Never saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. And that's where he's letting things be themselves. The universe is not trying to control anything. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. So I think that's a good place we'll sit. I want to read you two more poems. One's very short, one's a little longer. And then I'd like to hear from a few friends. This one I just came over the transom this morning, and it's by a poet that I'd never heard of. His name is Alfred Kramborg, and he wrote poetry about 100 years ago, and this was from 1916. And it's wonderfully ambiguous, but it goes into the territory of, I think, that Wordsworth was in, which is the sense of retribution and blame, self-blame or other blame. Finding fault is the, if anything, is a kind of impediment to the feeling of, or I guess that's what holds in place the feeling of separation, is this condemnation of some portion of reality. And this is called Dance. And also it's about the moon, because we've got this beautiful crescent moon to look forward to tonight with Venus and Saturn in conjunction. Dance. Moon dance, you were not to blame, nor you, lovely white moth. But I saw you together. And then this one is, it speaks again, this is by Tennyson, Alfred Lord Tennyson, and it's called Marriage Morning, and it speaks to that, I guess you would say that Buddha's enlightenment morning, when he saw the morning star, that's his marriage morning, the morning of joining together with the universe. And there's a word in here that that he uses, which I didn't know what it meant, so I looked it up. It's style, S-T-I-L-E-S, the styles. And they're a set of steps, 2 or 3 or 4 steps that go between fields. They go over a fence, or they go over a rock wall that bring you from one place to another. So it's this transition place. I guess it's a stepping through a gate, a portal. It's called Marriage Morning. Light so low upon earth, you send a flash to the sun, and here is the golden close of love. All my wooing is done. All the effort is done. All my wooing is done. Oh, all the woods and the meadows, woods where we hid from the wet, stiles where we stayed to be kind, meadows in which we met. Light so low in the vale, you flash and lighten afar, for this is the golden morning of love, and you are her morning star. Flash, I am coming, I come by meadow and stile and wood. Oh, lighten into my eyes and my heart, into my heart and my blood. Heart, you are great enough. Are you great enough for a love that never tires? Heart, are you great enough for a love that never tires? Are you afraid of this happiness? Oh, heart, are you great enough for love? I have heard of thorns and briars, over the thorns and briars, over the meadows and the stiles. So here's including everything, the thorns, the briars, over the world, to the end of it, flash of 1,000,000 miles. So there's Tennyson's awakening poem. And I think now I'd like to hear from my co-conspirators. Tess or Michelle, do you have anything to say?
I'll say something. I loved the line you said earlier about bodhisattvas aren't afraid to let life appear. And I was noticing, particularly today as Jordan was playing, the way in which he was so intimately informed by what kept appearing. Like it wasn't that he was making the music, it was that it felt like as if, as I was listening to it, this conversation was happening and he was making space for what might appear and sort of listening to it and then allowing it to come into form and kind of responding to it. And then there were moments where there'd be that great silence again and space to listen for what might appear. And it just kept going on. And it feels like a lot of what you've been saying today and how I notice it in my own life is when I can make space to be informed by what appears without thinking, oh, I don't know if something comes through my own heart that I think, oh no, not that. I can just listen to it and let it play out to see what actually is trying to be heard and try to let it out into things and respond before I am so sure it's not part of the song in a way. And I was also remembering one time I visited India and I got to see a rug making factory, and someone was explaining to me that each rug has a song that the maker sings. Each rug has its own song that they play as they go along. So each stitch and color and pattern has a note in the song, and how in a way that appearing that every single note has a place in the rug, has to have its spot. So yeah, I like all that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That we often feel that something is an impediment to my awakening, that my greed or my grief or my rage or whatever it is, and I just need to get rid of this. And in the Buddha's awakening night, it's this experience of that it's holding, it's not an impediment to my awakening, it's my awakening appearing in its dark form. And to be able to taste it and have it, and if I think it's an impediment to, as you say, we can't let it, we, it has something for us, we don't know what it is. And I love that about Jordan's notes, that I feel that too, letting the silence be the source of the next note. Michelle.
Hi, that's that sense. I love it when it's possible to be in that place where you're just letting things arise and sort of seeing what happens. And I've been thinking today, listening to you, of how in my family and for me, one of the things that feels like it gets in the way of that is a strong desire to be competent and on top of things and smart and things like that. And that's another way of sort of trying to control how I think things should be. And a couple of things came to my mind. One of them is, well, so this morning I was talking to some friends and somebody was talking about how they're sort of staggering to their feet at the beginning of the year, but they felt like they were getting there. And it gave me an image right away of myself, who also I feel like I'm staggering, and I thought, oh, but I don't feel anywhere near being on my feet, like I'm so staggering. But just simply by having a conversation about it and giving it a name and having an image, it let me enjoy my sense of staggering more than I'm tending to. And I had this image of like being on a tennis court, and instead of returning all the balls with great aplomb, and I was just sort of like, oh, there goes one. Oh darn, there goes one. And yet somehow I had some compassion for that part of me. And so I thought that's a thing. Like, if you just can get sort of an image and name it, and then it helps the judgment go away. And then the other thing, though, so my dad is pretty elderly. He also comes from this family that never wants to be stupid and wants to be competent and all of this. I know nobody else has this experience, but just my family. But anyway, he's had some issues with his cognitive abilities for a while, but then he got COVID at the end of last year, and that really, really put things in a new place. And now it's really hard for him to do really basic things. He can't, like, he looks at all his medications on a table and he's like, he's no idea what to do with them. He can't remember that his phone has volume. And that's why he can't hear the ringer, because he's turned the volume down, really kind of basic things like whose laundry is that and who was here yesterday. But it's not as though he's not gone. He's still him. And the challenge of being in that place where you can't do something that it looks so much like you should be able to do, it's been really interesting for me to watch him handle that and meet that, and going back and forth between the kind of welcoming, like, this is what's happening. This is me. I am this person who can't do this incredibly basic thing that I've been able to do my whole life. And what do I do with that? And sometimes he goes to the place of blame or anger, or what do I, you're making me feel bad. It's you. But a lot of times he doesn't. And I've been really impressed at his ability to meet what's happening and let it in and just be like, wow, I'm grateful I've got some help. I think I could do this, but I recognize finally, okay, I'm not doing it. And maybe, I get to spend a little time with my daughter, and that's a nice thing. And that's it. Like, that's those things we really don't want to meet. That's what it's really, we really don't like that. Like, being demented and not having our mind and not being able to do the things we think we should do. But that's where I keep meeting it. Like, if I can say, maybe I'm not the thing I want to be, and I'm a competent, smart, whatever person. And if I can meet that, I don't know, it's just like, for my dad and I, when he does that, there's space for us to be together and we can be closer. And it's a big deal. So those things have been coming to my mind listening to you today.
Oh, thank you. I think the thing that, the image that came to mind is Buddha in his austerities being defeated, that tremendous effort that the self, I want to be a good person, I want to be a good daughter, and this is what a good daughter does, and the way being defeated is a promising moment where we're either so exhausted or trying to keep this marriage going, and finally the person leaves us, and there's some sense of resting. That's the touching the ground moment, where we touch the ground where we are, where what would it be like? What
is it like?
What is it like? Right? What is it like if I'm not trying to get to a different or better or maintain the sense of myself or my life?
Right. Then you've just got what's here, right?
And it's interesting with your father, where I noticed that with my own mother, where sometimes the thing that my mother would be the person who would, she said this numerous times, deeply, she would never want to be around if she didn't have full access to her intellectual capabilities. and she's hasn't had that for a number of years now. And the more they were stripped away, in a way, the more intimacy was possible, and she was no longer holding me off and holding people off, and so we don't know what our lives will, what will come next, and how they will change us. But I think, like with the Bodhisattva, the feeling that we always have some refuge that is our essential home, and that doesn't require any work other than it doesn't require any work. Let's see, Jordan, do you have anything to say since we've been talking about you and your music?
I've been thinking about this song lately written by a guy named Shane MacGowan, who is the frontman for the Pogues, um, notorious frontman for the Pogues. But the song's called "A Rainy Night in Soho," and for some reason it's just been in my head like every day. I wake up and it's there. Just this morning when I was coming out to sit here, one of the lines of the song is, "On a rainy night in Soho, the wind was whistling all its charms." And I opened the back door of my house, and the wind just blasted my face, and it was frigid and like knives. But for some reason, it like coincided perfectly with when that line was happening in my head. And it just felt like, yeah, there, the wind is whistling all its charms right there. Um, and I just let it. And in that, it's like that song and me and the wind were all just right there. And I didn't have to do anything. And that, I guess in some way, that's sort of like how the music happens. Like I don't have to do anything. The wind just blows, and there's the music, and all I have to do is kind of just be there for it to show up.
Out of the great silence. Great silence. Marion, I'm not sure how to, if I can, there we go. Do you have anything to say on the East Coast?
Thanks. While you were talking, I was feeling how accessible the silence is sometimes. If I slow down is a good time when I feel there's that little slit of space kind of opens up, and yeah, there's space. Tess had said there's more space. And when Jordan plays his music, or some music or something beautiful is happening, this morning I felt that silence when he was playing his music. It was so simple to just be there with nothing else, just that. This morning my granddaughter came into my room and with some books and wanted to read, and she said, "Give me a place to sit," and we got in bed together, and it was that same thing of just that. It was just that, and it was so wonderful. But I think the space that's made also allows for the things that aren't so wonderful to be able to also find that silence and that space in those two. Just having the experience of the space and the silence has some kind of place to experience all of it, not just the wonderful things. Thank you, Allison.
Molly, in Southern California, what does the silence sound like from there?
Yeah, so it was interesting while we were meditating. I was having that sense of spaciousness, but I felt like I was having a lot of physical change to accommodate it. I don't really know how to describe it, but I thought if I was a deck of cards that needed shuffled for the next round of the game, that's what was happening in my whole being. So I just sat there and experienced it. I don't really know what it was, but it was very interesting and I do have like a physical sense of spaciousness that is different for me.
Mm.
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful image of the deck of cards rearranging the order. And that's this. I remember the sound as a kid, the sound of the cards and the feeling of the air rushing through of this. It's a feeling of the not knowing being coming into form. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and it was physically uncomfortable, but it didn't have anything to do with unwellness or anything like that. It was some, yeah, reshuffling. It was really interesting.
Well, thank you. And Michelle and Tess, any final words before we close? No? All right. Next week we have one final Sunday of Michelle and Tess and Jesse and Allison will be there in the final Sunday for the silence, great silence. And thank all of you for coming. And let's have Amaryllis and Jordan take us out. Thank you, Jordan. So beautiful. Thank you, Amaryllis, for taking us out. And thank you, everyone who came today. It means a lot to everyone else that you're here and holding the temple and being a part of the community.